Hello everyone. It's a bit of a stormy night outside. I don't know if you'll hear that. Today we're doing another section of the Gita, and this time we're doing chapter 4, verses 30 to 33. And if you looked at the previous video, you'd remember that in the last few verses, Krishna was describing or listing a variety of meditation techniques. He was talking about restraining the senses, ritual worship, controlling the breath, asceticism, insight practice, wisdom practice, all these different methods that exist or existed in his time and mostly exist today. If anything, there's more practices, more variety of practices available to the typical practitioner today. So now, in verse 30, he says, all these methods of sacrifice and what are understood as purification rituals may appear different, but those who gain some success in any of these do come closer to the eternal space of Brahma. For those who follow no practices, there is nothing in this world or the other best of the Kurus. Thus, various kinds of practices have been spread by word of mouth from the priests. Learn all of them, because awareness of one will lead to freedom. But greater than the sacrificing of material possessions is the offering of being aware, punisher of your enemies. Son of Partha, all actions reach their end in totality. So in the last few verses, we heard that there are all kinds of different spiritual disciplines. Krishna was not saying that these are the good ones and others are the bad ones, or so on and so forth. What he says is that although these are many different practices, anyone who actually puts the discipline into any cultivation practice, any spiritual practice, will gain in some way. If they obtain some success by making the effort in it, by having the right attitude towards it, which is to be open to that sense of union, and if they have the right discipline for it, which involves doing it on a routine and regular basis, they will come closer to the eternal space of Brahma. They will become closer to the supreme consciousness. Whereas those who follow no practices, for them there is nothing in this world or the other. And so there is a distinction, but it's not that these practices are good, those practices are bad. It's that doing any practice can be good if you do it sincerely. Whereas doing no practices, it doesn't matter what else you do, it's not going to get you closer to enlightenment, right? You can talk a lot about spirituality, you can buy a lot of spiritual books, you can read a lot about spirituality, you can dress in clothing that you think is spiritual or wear crystal beads or whatever else you're going to do, right? You can make yourself look spiritual, you can act spiritual, you can talk spiritual, you can judge spiritually, you can do any of those things. But if you're not actually engaging in practice, then none of those things help. So then he says that various methods of practice have been spread by word of mouth, and learn all of them, because awareness of one will lead to freedom. That is to say, both in the sense, I think there's a double entendre here, that if you can become aware of even one practice, you can find one practice and really do it and really dedicate it to it and do it right. If all you're doing is chi breathing, for example, and that's the only thing you do, if you do it right, you'll become enlightened. On the other hand, it also means awareness of one, in the sense that fundamentally the key to all these practices is that it's the awareness of the non-difference between yourself and reality, the union with the higher consciousness, the supreme consciousness. And finally, he notes that he does concede one distinction, which is that greater than the sacrificing of material possessions is the offering of being aware. That an ascetic practice that is not based on any level of insight, not based on any level of concentration, not based on doing any kind of cultivation practice. You could give up all your things. You could choose not to have sex, not to drink, not to smoke, not to, I don't know, not to eat meat, not to get up too late, not to go to bed too late, or any of those things. You could sacrifice your car, you could give up your family, and become a hermit in the hills somewhere. But if you're not actually practicing, nothing is going to happen, right? So the sacrificing of material possessions is really irrelevant in the context of your awareness, of offering your awareness. Well, he says the offering of being aware. If you're seeking that consciousness of awareness, then you're going to change the way you live. Just changing the way you live without seeking the consciousness of awareness is not going to do anything for you. And I quite like this, that all actions reach their end in totality. That when you are total in your being and your doing and your acting, then you become liberated of the karma of actions. Now, you might seek and look in a lot of places, and some of these places won't be perfect. Some of these practices won't be perfect. Some of what you do won't be perfect. Some of them might only offer you a kind of a starting point, but not really an end point. But it's much better, Krishna is saying, to start somewhere than to not begin at all. And the place where any of these paths will ultimately lead, if you have sincerity. If you have sincerity, you will know how to move beyond practices that are too simple, or that are not accurate, or that are not doing what they need for you, or that sort of thing, right? If you are sincere, then you will know to stick to the practices that are good, even though they're hard, or even though they're not as interesting as other practices, or that sort of thing. If you're sincere, then you're going to know how to look for the right teaching and the right teacher and the right place to do it and everything else. Gradually, you'll keep improving your level of cultivation. You'll keep improving your work of cultivation and doing things in a better way. Sincerity, to me, I think, and I think to Krishna, is the beginning of enlightenment, and then totality is the end of it. So mainly just let your life and let your everyday activities be dedicated, even if you're doing other things too, right? Be dedicated to that consciousness of being a practitioner, of going into it, of doing it, and of looking for more, and trying to be as sincere as possible in it. I guess that's everything for today. If you like this video, please feel free to share it. Feel free to subscribe. Check out the different playlists. There's all the playlist with the Gita videos, but then there's a number of other playlists to look at, and especially check out the Yifa Society playlist. And if you're interested in a curriculum of spiritual training, then get in touch about the Yifa Society. That's everything for today. Thank you.